So today we are continuing Catholicism versus Feminism, Just the Sources by Stephanie Gordon. Remember to go and check out Rules for Retrogrades, Timothy J. Gordon's YouTube channel, and also to follow him on Rumble, and check out the books which these two have put out, The Case for Patriarchy, and Ask Your Husband. And without further ado, we'll be continuing this series of biblical quotations against feminism. And today we're doing the Old Testament. 11. Sirach chapter 25, verses 16 through 25. Quote, I would sooner keep house with a lion or a dragon than keep house with a spiteful wife. A woman's spite changes her appearance and makes her face as grim as a bear's. When her husband goes out to dinner with his neighbors, he cannot help heaving bitter sighs. No spite can approach the spite of a woman. May a sinner's lot be hers. Like the climbing of a sand hill for elderly feet, such is a garrulous wife for a quiet husband. Do not be taken in by a woman's beauty. Never lose your head over a woman. Bad temper, insolence, and shame hold sway where the wife supports the husband. Low spirits, gloomy face, stricken heart, such is a spiteful wife. Slack hands and sagging knees, such is the wife who does not make her husband happy. Sin began with woman, and thanks to her we must all die. Do not let water find a leak, nor a spiteful woman give free rein to her tongue. Unquote. 13. Proverbs 31, verse 27. Quote, She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Unquote. 16. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Quote, To the woman he said, quote, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Unquote. Unquote. 17. Genesis chapter 2, verses 22 through 23. Quote, And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Unquote. 21. Leviticus chapter 27, verses 3 through 5. Quote, A boy between the ages of 1 month and 5 years is valued at 5 shekels of silver. A girl of that age is valued at 3 shekels of silver. Unquote. 22. Numbers chapter 30, verses 3 through 15. Quote, If a woman vows a vow to the Lord and binds herself by a pledge, while within her father's house, in her youth, and her father hears of her vow and of her pledge by which she has bound herself, and says nothing to her, then all her vows shall stand, and every pledge by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her father opposes her on the day that he hears of it, no vow of hers, no pledge by which she has bound herself shall stand, and the Lord will forgive her, because her father opposed her. If she marries a husband while under her vows, or any thoughtless utterance of her lips, by which she has bound herself, and her husband hears of it, and says nothing to her on the day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if, on the day that her husband comes to hear of it, he opposes her, then he makes void her vow that was on her, and the thoughtless utterance of her lips by which she bound herself, and the Lord will forgive her. But any vow of a widow or of a divorced woman, anything by which she has bound herself, shall stand against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by a pledge with an oath, and her husband heard of it, and said nothing to her, and did not oppose her, then all her vows shall stand, and every pledge by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her husband makes them null and void on the day that he hears of them, then whatever proceeds out of her lips concerning her vows or concerning her pledge of herself shall not stand. Her husband has made them void, and the Lord will forgive her. Any vow and any binding oath to afflict herself her husband may establish, or her husband may make void. But if her husband says nothing to her from day to day, then he establishes all her vows or all her pledges that are upon her. He has established them, because he has said nothing to her on the day that he heard of them. But if he makes them null and void after he has heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. Unquote. 23. Judges chapter 9, verses 54 and 55. Hurriedly he came to his armor-bearer. Draw your sword and kill me, so they can't say, quote, a woman has killed him, unquote. So his servant ran him through, and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. 24. Judges chapter 16, verse 16. Quote, she tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Unquote. 25. 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 29. Quote, may the house of Joab never be afflicted by men who suffer from running sore, or leprosy, or effeminacy, or who are doomed to die by the sword, or are in need of bread. Unquote. 26. Tobit, chapter 6, verse 19. Quote, then you are about to have intercourse with her. Both of you must first get up to pray. Beg the Lord of heaven that mercy and protection be granted you. Do not be afraid, for she was set apart for you before the world existed. You will save her, and she will go with you. And I assume that you will have children by her, and they will be like brothers for you. So do not worry. Unquote. When Tobiah heard Raphael's words, that she was his kinswoman, and of the lineage of his ancestral house, he loved her deeply, and his heart was truly set on her. 27. Esther chapter 1, verses 17 through 20. Quote, for the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, quote, King Xerxes commanded the queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. Unquote. This very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then when the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all his vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands, from the least to the greatest. 28. Esther chapter 1, verse 22. Quote, he sent letters to all the parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his own home, and should say whatever he pleases. Unquote. 29. Psalm 46, verse 11. Quote, let the king be enthralled by your beauty. Honor him, for he is your Lord. Unquote. 30. Psalm 128, verse 3. Quote, your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Unquote. 31. Proverbs chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion, and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. 32. Proverbs chapter 5, 18 through 23. Quote, May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breasts satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline they will die, led astray by their own great folly. 33. Proverbs chapter 7, verses 11 through 13. Quote, "She was a wild and rebellious woman who would not stay at home. She walked the streets, always looking for someone to trap." Unquote. 34. Proverbs chapter 7, verses 21 through 23. Quote, "With persuasive words she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life." 35. Proverbs 11, verse 22. "Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion." 36. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 4. "A wife of noble character is her husband's crown, but a disgraceful wife is like decay in his bones." 37. Proverbs chapter 19, verses 13 through 14. "A foolish child is a father's ruin. A quarrelsome wife is like the constant dripping of a leaky roof. Houses and wealth are inherited from parents, but a prudent wife is from the Lord." 38. Proverbs 25, verse 24. "Better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife." 39. Proverbs 27, verses 15 and 16. Quote, "A quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaky roof in a rainstorm. Restraining her is like restraining the wind or grasping oil with the hand." Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31. "An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor, and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat of the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Quote, "Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all." Unquote. "Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. 41. Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 26. And I find more bitter than death the woman, whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. 42. Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verse 9. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity, for that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. 43. Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 3. As an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. 44. Wisdom, chapter 3, verses 11 through 19. For whoever despises wisdom and instruction is miserable. Their hope is vain. Their labors are unprofitable, and their works are useless. Their wives are foolish, and their children evil. Their offspring are accursed. For blessed is the barren woman who is undefiled, who has not entered a sinful union. She will have fruit when God examines souls. Blessed also is the eunuch whose hands have done no lawless deed, and who has not devised wicked things against the Lord. For special favor will be shown him for his faithfulness, and a place of great delight in the temple of the Lord. For the fruit of good labors is renowned, and the root of understanding does not fail. But children of adulterers will not come to maturity, and the offspring of an unlawful union will perish. Even if they live long, they will be held of no account, and finally their old age will be without honor. If they die young, they will have no hope and no consolation in the day of decision. For the end of an unrighteous generation is grievous. 45. Wisdom chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. Wisdom protected the first formed father of the world. When he alone had been created, she delivered him from his transgression and gave him strength to rule all things. 46. Sirach chapter 7, verses 18 through 20. Do not barter a friend for money, or a true brother for the gold of Ophir. Do not reject a sensible wife. A gracious wife is more precious than pearls. Do not mistreat a servant who works faithfully, or laborers who devote themselves to their task. 47. Sirach chapter 7, verses 23 through 26. Do you have sons? Correct them and cure their stubbornness in their early youth. Do you have daughters? Keep them chaste, and do not be indulgent to them. Give your daughter in marriage, and a worry comes to an end, but give her to a sensible man. Do you have a wife? Do not mistreat her, but do not trust the wife you hate. 48. Sirach chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. Do not be jealous of the wife of your bosom, lest you teach her to do evil against you. Do not give a woman power over you to trample on your dignity. 49. Sirach chapter 9, verse 8. Avert your eyes from a shapely woman. Do not gaze upon the beauty that is not yours. Through a woman's beauty many have been ruined, for love of it burns like a fire. 50. Sirach chapter 33, verses 19 and 20. Listen to me, leaders of the people, rulers of the congregation, pay heed. Let neither son nor wife, neither brother nor friend, have power over you as long as you live. While breath of life is still in you, let no one take your place. Do not give your wealth to another, lest you must plead for support yourself. 51. Sirach chapter 36 verses 26 through 32. A woman will accept any man as a husband, yet one daughter will be preferable to another. A woman's beauty causes a man's face to light up, and there is nothing a man desires more. And if, perchance, her speech is kind and gentle, her husband is the most fortunate of men. A wife is her husband's greatest treasure, a suitable helper for him, and a pillar to provide support. Where there is no fence, the property will be plundered. When a man has no wife, he wanders about aimlessly and in misery. Who will trust an armed thief who shifts quickly from city to city? So it is with a man who has no nest, but lodges wherever night overtakes him. 52. Sirach chapter 37 verse 11. Never consult with a woman about her rival, or with a coward about war, with a merchant about business, or with a buyer about selling, with a miser about generosity, or with a cruel person about goodness of heart, with an idler about any kind of work, or with a casual worker about completing the job, with a lazy servant about a large undertaking. Do not depend on these for any counsel. 53. Sirach chapter 40 verse 19. Children and the founding of a city will preserve one's name, but better than either is finding wisdom. Cattle and orchards make a man well known, but better than either is a perfect wife. 54. Sirach chapter 40 verse 23. A friend and a companion are encountered in good time, but better than either is a sensible wife. 55. Sirach chapter 42 verses 9 through 14. A daughter is a treasure that makes her father anxious, and in his worry about her he loses sleep. When she is young, for fear she may never marry, and when she is married, for fear her husband may hate her. When she is a virgin, for fear she may be seduced and become pregnant in her father's house. When she is a husband, for fear she may prove unfaithful, and after marriage, for fear that she may prove to be barren. Keep a close watch on a headstrong daughter, lest she make you the object of ridicule to your enemies, causing you to be the talk of the town, the subject of gossip, and an object of derision in public gatherings. Make sure that her room has no lattice, no spot that overlooks the approaches to the house. Do not allow her to parade her beauty before any man, or spend her time with married women. For just as out of clothes comes the moth, so from woman comes woman's wickedness. Better is the wickedness of a man than a woman's goodness, but better is a religious daughter than a son without shame. 56. Sirach chapter 45 verse 25. Just as the covenant was established with David the son of Jesse of the tribe of Judah, that the royal succession was always to pass from father to son, so the priestly succession was to pass from Aaron to his descendants. 57. Sirach chapter 47, verses 19 and 20. However, you summoned women to be at your side and became subject to them as a result of your bodily appetites. You soiled your reputation and sullied your family line, bringing wrath upon your children and grief at your folly. 58. Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1. In that day, so few men will be left that 7 women will fight for each man, saying, quote, "Let us marry you, we will provide our own food and clothing, only let us take your names so we won't be mocked as old maids." Unquote. 59. Isaiah chapter 19 verse 16. In that day the Egyptians will be as weak as women. They will cower in fear beneath the upraised fist of the Lord of Heaven's armies. 60. Isaiah 49, verse 15. Can a woman forget her suckling child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. 61. Jeremiah chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Go and shout this message to Jerusalem. This is what the Lord says. I remember how eager you were to please me as a young bride long ago, how you loved me and followed me even through the barren wilderness. 62. Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 1. If a man divorces his wife, and she leaves him and marries another man, should he return to her again? Would not the land be completely defiled? But you have lived as a prostitute with many lovers. Would you now return to me? Declares the Lord. 63. Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 6. Now let me ask you a question. Do men give birth to babies? Then why do they stand here, ashen-faced, hands pressed against their sides, like a woman in labor? 64. Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 19. Quote, besides, unquote, the women added, quote, do you suppose that we were burning incense and pouring out liquid offerings to the Queen of Heaven, and making cakes marked with her image, without our husbands knowing it and helping us? Of course not, unquote. 65. Lamentations chapter 4, verse 3. Even jackals offer their breasts to nurse their young, but my people have become heartless like ostriches in the desert. 66. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 20. Then you took your sons and daughters, the children you had borne to me, and sacrificed them to your gods. Was your prostitution not enough? 67. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 32. You adulterous wife, you prefer strangers to your own husband. 68. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 44. Behold, everyone who uses Proverbs will use this proverb about you. Like mother, like daughter. 69. Hosea chapter 2, verses 4 through 25. Accuse your mother, accuse, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. Let her remove her prostitution from her face, her adultery from between her breasts, or I will strip her naked, leaving her as on the day of her birth. I will make her like the wilderness, make her like an arid land, let her die of thirst. I will have no pity on her children, for they are children of prostitution. Yes, their mother has prostituted herself. She who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, quote, I will go after my lovers, who give me bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink, unquote. Therefore, I will hedge in her way with thorns, and erect a wall against her, so that she cannot find her paths. If she runs after her lovers, she will not overtake them. If she seeks them, she will not find them. Then she will say, quote, I will go back to my first husband, for I was better off than now, unquote. She did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, and the oil. I who lavished upon her silver and gold, which they used for Baal. Therefore I will take back my grain in its time, and my wine in its season. I will snatch away my wool and my flax, which were to cover her nakedness. Now I will lay bare her shame in full view of her lovers, and no one can deliver her out of my hand. I will put an end to all her joy, her festivals, her new moons, her Sabbaths, all her seasonal feasts. I will lay waste her vines and fig trees, of which she said, quote, these are the fees my lovers have given me, unquote. I will turn them into rank growth, and wild animals shall devour them. I will punish her for the days of the Baals, for whom she burnt incense, when she decked herself out with her rings and her jewelry, and went after her lovers. But me she forgot, oracle of the Lord. Therefore I will allure her now. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak persuasively to her. Then I will give her the vineyard she had, and the valleys of Achor as a door of hope. There she will respond as in the days of her youth, as on the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. On that day, oracle of the Lord, you shall call me, quote, my husband, unquote, and you shall never again call me, quote, my Baal, unquote. I will remove from her mouth the name of the Baals. They shall no longer be mentioned by their name. I will make a covenant for them on that day, with the wild animals, with the birds of the air, and with the things that crawl on the ground. Bow and sword warfare I will destroy from the land, and I will give them rest in safety. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me with justice and with judgment, with loyalty and with compassion. I will betroth you to me with fidelity, and you shall know the Lord. On that day I will respond, oracle of the Lord. I will respond to the heavens, and they will respond to the earth. The earth will respond to the grain and wine and oil, and these will respond to Jezreel. I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will have pity on the not pitied. I will say to not my people, quote, you are my people, unquote, and he will say, my God. 70. Amos, chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Hear this word, you cows of Bashan, on the mount of Samaria. You women who oppress the poor and crush the needy, and say to your husbands, quote, bring us some drinks, unquote. The sovereign Lord has sworn by his holiness, quote, the time will come surely when you will be taken away with hooks, the last of you with fish hooks. You will each go straight out through the breaches in the wall, and you will be cast out toward Harmon, declares the Lord, unquote. 71. Micah, chapter 2, verses 9 through 10. You drive the women of my people from their pleasant homes. You take away my blessing from their children forever. 72. Malachi, chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. You ask why? It is because the Lord is the witness between you and the wife of your youth. You have been unfaithful to her, though she is your partner, the wife of your marriage covenant. Has not the one God made you? You belong to him in body and spirit. And what does the one God seek? Godly offspring. So be on your guard, and do not be unfaithful to the wife of your youth. Quote, the man who hates and divorces his wife, unquote, says the Lord, the God of Israel, quote, does violence to the one he should protect, unquote, says the Lord Almighty. So be on your guard, and do not be unfaithful.